All right, how's it going? I know this isn't the type of content I typically post on this channel, but I got a really cool opportunity with CU to go to the Big 12 Championship Tournament for men's basketball. So we're getting into March Madness. It's going to be a super sick tournament. Get to go cover this for the schools. So even though CU's not going to be in it for very long, I do get to be there for the whole week and cover all these games. So I'm going to take you all along with me to Kansas City. And I have to get to bed right now. It's like 12 in the morning, and I got to leave at like 8. So
You said it's what, like 20 minutes?
yeah,
Gotcha. Let's go, bro.
So day one was pretty chill. We made it back to the Airbnb we'd be staying at. It was a super sick place. Even had this super cool game table over here. It's my boy Zach playing some Simon Says on it. But day one, we had to end it with some Kansas City barbecue. So we went to one of the dopest spots, Q39, downtown Kansas City. I've been there over the summer. It was super gas. But we got back to the house, had to prepare for the next day, got up in the Word real quick before I went to bed. And then that was it. And we were ready to go on to day one of games.
Alright, we're up for day one. It was a bit of a brutal night's sleep, but we're good. We're ready to go for today. I'm gonna get ready and head down to the stadium.
So, got all dressed up for the day and then went down to the T-Mobile Center. And when we arrived, they were super hospitable, super welcoming, gave us this super cool gift. It had like a water bottle in it, a little note from the commissioner of the Big 12, which was super cool, just welcoming in all the media. And then we went down to the floor level area where we were heading back to the media room. And yeah, I got the tour back here. It was super cool. The atmosphere of this whole tournament was just super dope. Whole stadium was decked out. It was looking really cool. This was our little view from Media Row, where we would be doing most of our work during the tournament, and then this was our little media lounge that we got to hang out in as well. But then yeah, we had to head back up and get ready for the first game between Oklahoma State and Cincinnati.
All right, so we're here at the T-Mobile Center for the first game. It's going to be between the Cincinnati Bearcats and the Oklahoma State Cowboys. So yeah, kicking it off here, the first game. Who do you have winning this one?
You know, I think it's an exciting matchup here, Liam, but I am going to go with the Oklahoma State Cowboys just because of the reason that, you know, they defended home court last Saturday. They did get a victory over Cincinnati, and I think much like Colorado, this is going to be a team that's looking to build off that momentum.
Yeah, I'm going to be going with Cincinnati personally. They're a very streaky team. They're very up and down. Right now they've been on a bit of a decline, and they're kind of due for that uphill spike. This is typically where we tend to see it. They lose a few games, and then they're able to bounce back, especially behind that high-powered offense. It is a streaky offense. And yeah, against a team like Oklahoma State, I think I can see them shining. So we'll be right back at halftime, kind of give an update on how the game's going.
So that's my buddy Leo. He came on this trip with me. He's going to be covering these games alongside me. I'll tag his Instagram down below. Go check him out for sure. But yeah, Cincinnati, pretty solid first half. All things considered, gave themselves a sizable lead despite Oklahoma State hitting a nice little buzzer beater before they went into the locker room. All right, halftime here between Cincinnati and Oklahoma State. The Bearcats currently leading by a score of 38-26. It's been some sloppy basketball so far, but Leo, what have you seen?
Yeah, sloppy is a great way to put it, Liam, because that's really all we've seen, especially if you look at Oklahoma State. They went on an extended period where they just couldn't get a basket to fall. Both teams have struggled from pretty much everywhere on the court today. But as you said, a 12-point lead for Cincinnati, and they look in control of this game so far.
Yeah, that streaky scoring has been the name of the game for Cincinnati so far. They've been on top of that. And for Oklahoma State, yeah, early in the game it was tough to get a bucket. They had 18.2% shooting through the first 10 minutes of the game, and that's not something they've been able to recover from. They were able to bring it within 3, but after that, Cincinnati was able to pull back away. And
they've just not been. Oklahoma State hasn't looked the same since. So you're gonna have to see if they can turn it around in the second half. So far, your first pick not looking great.
Not looking great, but there still is a second half to play, and if Oklahoma State can get anything to drop, they might be able to make it close. Like you said, that run before the half does give you some optimism if you're Oklahoma State. However, credit to Cincinnati being able to shut that down and ultimately close out the half strong.
Yeah, we will update you when the game has come to a close. Give us our final thoughts on it.
Well, from this point forward, the Bearcats took over and the Lob City Bearcats were born. It was exactly that, Lob City for the entire second half, and they separated themselves from Oklahoma State down the stretch in highlight fashion. Look at these.
All right, wrapping up the Cincinnati and Oklahoma State game. It was a blowout. Cincinnati pulled away, leading by as much as 22 points at the end of that game, and we saw the emergence of what we have termed the Lob City Bearcats towards the end of that game.
Yes, those Lob City Bearcats did take over in that second half. It was a uphill climb for Oklahoma State coming out of halftime, and they just honestly never looked motivated. They never looked like they wanted to compete. And Cincinnati ultimately walked all over them.
Yeah, Cincinnati was just dominant all around the rim in the paint. They were completely physically dominant. Obviously, we mentioned the lobs, the dunks. It was very flashy towards the end. But early in the game, they established themselves defensively really well, and they eliminated Oklahoma State. Likes to work a lot down the paint. They're not a very good three-point shooting team, but their three-point percentage was actually higher than their actual field goal percentage in this game. And that's just the type of limitation that Cincinnati had on them. So we're now preparing for Colorado and TCU. We'll be right back with a preview for that.
Most definitely.
All right, so now the 16th seeded Colorado Buffaloes ready to face the 9th seeded TCU Horned Frogs.
Yes.
So we are here actually to write for Colorado. So this is the game that we are most going to be looking the closest at.
For sure.
And this is kind of where I feel like this is a pretty good situation for Colorado to try and make a run.
It definitely is, Liam. We sat next to each other last Saturday where Colorado won by 20. Again, we're both hoping that they can kind of pick up and carry on this momentum. Now, what are they going to have to do? They're going to have to hit their shots, not turn over the ball over, and win the rebound battle. Those are going to be the big three keys for Colorado today.
Yeah, and they were another team that established themselves very physically against TCU in their most recent matchup. And that's the only way they were able to win by as much as they were. That's going to be the same exact thing that they do in this game if they want to have that same success. Beating a team like this 2 times in a row, especially so quickly on the turnaround, that's hard to do because they're going to make a lot of adjustments Colorado's not going to be prepared for. But if Colorado can keep playing that same type of game they played on Saturday, hitting their shots like you said, not turning the ball over, just playing good, clean basketball, they got a good shot at this.
Yes, they do. It's going to be exciting to see how this game shapes out.
Yep, we'll be back at halftime.
The first half of this game was incredibly back and forth. Both of these teams were playing hard, great ball movement from both squads, and it was pretty clear that they had made the adjustments from the recent game they had just played against one another, and it also set us up for quite the second half. It showed that this second half was going to come down to the wire, and there wasn't really a clear favorite to win this game. All right, so the first half has come to a close, and TCU currently leads the Buffaloes 27-26. After CU held the lead for the majority of the half, just kind of fell apart towards the end there.
Yeah, definitely a little disappointed if you are a Colorado fan looking at the way this team closed out the half. The optimistic things, though, however, is just rebounding, it's turnovers, it's the stuff that Colorado knows how to fix. They're going to need to improve on that if they want to make a run this half.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that is one of the benefits of struggling during a season. You can find those weak points and you can figure out how to fix them in these big moments and in these big games. And these are the same struggles that Colorado has had all year long. And they've had to deal with fixing them at a number of times. And so this is going to have to be the same way. They're going to need to go into the locker room at halftime. They're going to need to address those same mistakes. And they're going to need to know how to attack them, how to fix them. And, yeah, the offensive rebounding was seriously costing them.
Most definitely.
Yeah, and so we're going to be going into the second half now. And we will be back with a recap at the end of this close contest. Well, early on in the second half, it was all Buffaloes. They started off shooting the ball incredibly well. Andre Yakimovsky was leading the way for them. He hit a couple clutch threes early in the quarter, and they were really starting to pull away. That lead that they'd had in the first was beginning to reform here in the second half. And yeah, they're again just shooting the lights out, but then TCU was able to bring it back close. They had a late run that actually saw them get within 2 points, but CU was just barely able to close out the game and advance to the next round.
All right, post-game from the Colorado Buffaloes defeating the TCU Horned Frogs in an upset. The Buffaloes were
they were pushed down the stretch.
They were.
It became a very close game, became a scary game at points, but they were able to pull it out in the end.
Yeah, it was a very exciting finish to the game. It looked a little skeptical there close, especially with TCU being able to retake the lead a couple times there in the second half. But ultimately, Colorado Buffaloes held sound, knocked down important free throws in the clutch, and that's probably going to be the big reason why they are able to advance, Liam.
Yeah, Javon Ruffin knocked down 2 free throws, proved to be the dagger at the end of the game to save his career as well as the other seniors on the team extended at least for another game and save this team's season. And they are now the 16 seed going to face number 8 West Virginia, 8-seeded team in the bracket. And this is another team they have not beat this year, but they have played them close. They struggled to close out the game, but they showed the ability to close out the game today. They showed that ability on Saturday as well, both against TCU, but they've shown that more recently, the ability to just close out games. So, yeah, that's something they're going to need to do down the stretch if they are going to make it far into this tournament and have a bit of a Cinderella run.
Most definitely. And you look at Colorado, be able to carry this momentum over into the next day. They're going to need to do a lot better attacking the boards and getting rebounds, though.
Yes, they are. They were out rebounded incredibly today. 22 rebounds TCU had by the end of the game. That is quite the large number for a losing team of a game. It was just TCU shooting inefficiency that was able to help put the Buffs over the top. We are now preparing for Kansas State versus Arizona State. This is going to be probably the most full we'll see this stadium tonight. Pretty much a home court advantage game for Kansas State, and going to be a big one for them against a sneakily tough opponent in Arizona State. So we'll be back with our pregame review of that one. All right, so now previewing Arizona State and Kansas State. This is one of the biggest games of the night. We start at 6 p.m. local time. Who do you have in this game?
This one's going to be exciting. Although I do like Arizona State's team, and I do think they can catch fire, I'm going to roll with Kansas State as I think they are the better overall rounded team, and I do see them being able to take advantage of this home atmosphere, per se.
Yeah, Kansas State winning 2 of their last 3 games, so they've definitely experienced winning more recently. Arizona State, on the other hand, they've lost 3 straight, but I'm going to go with the underdog pick here. I'm going to go with Arizona State. I like this team physically. They haven't really put out the production that I expected they would at the beginning of the season. They haven't been able to string it all together consistently, and it's kind of left them towards the bottom of the Big 12. But I think that they are a team that can surprise some people if they use their size well, if they are able to just physically dominate the other team, which I have a feeling they're going to be able to do against a team like Kansas State. It doesn't have a ton of size. It's a young group for Arizona State, and I think they're going to pull off the upset today.
It's going to be exciting to see regardless, but we'll check in from halftime.
Well, early in the first half, the 3-ball was falling well for both teams, but primarily Kansas State. They opened the game just letting the 3-ball fly, and despite the fact that Arizona towards the end of the half started to make some shots of their own and push it back a little bit, Kansas State clearly held the momentum as they went into halftime.
All right, so we got halftime between the Kansas State Wildcats and the Arizona State Sun Devils, and man, off the start of this game, Kansas State came out hot. 5 straight threes to open the game. Absolutely incredible start.
It was an absolutely ferocious start, and that's what this game really has been. It's been a game of runs. Both of these teams have had their share of momentum swings, and when they have had the shot fallen, they've taken advantage of it on the offensive end. It's been a really fun, exciting contest so far.
Yeah, and Arizona State currently trailing by 7, 38-31 going into the half, and they did actually take the lead at one point. They came back, had a lead, were able to extend it a little bit, but then Kansas State came back, had a run of their own. So yeah, it really, as Leo said, it's been back and forth runs for both teams, and it's pretty much just going to come down to who can extend their runs, who can deliver as consistently as possible down the stretch.
Correct. Maybe we'll see some better defense here.
Yes,
maybe
maybe we will.
Well, the second half got off to a very similar start to the first, with Kansas State shooting the 3-ball at a lethal clip and extending their lead pretty early. And while it looked like they were maybe going to be putting Arizona State away, the Sun Devils actually made a bit of a run towards the end of the game. They made this quite the close contest and had Kansas State sweating it out, but ultimately could not get the job done.
All right, so that is a wrap for Arizona State and Kansas State. Sun Devils falling short in that game, and Yeah, it was a game of streaky scoring, but Kansas State held through.
They did. They were able to hold on, although there was a couple times where Arizona State, and credit to them, were able to cut it down to a two possession lead, which was pretty exciting for them. I would say the couple fans in attendance definitely probably felt some joy from that.
Yeah, it was basically a home court advantage as much as it could be for Kansas State. There were pretty much I think we counted about 8 or 9 fans of Arizona State that we could see from where we're sitting. But yeah, it was still a very, Arizona State wasn't really able to get the same streaky scoring that they had, the same long runs scoring that they had in the first half. Weren't ever able to reclaim that lead either, and so from there, Kansas State just kind of kept a steady momentum, steady pace through the rest of the game, and just held on for the win.
Most certainly.
All right, so we are just ahead of the Utah versus UCF game, the final game of our first day here at the Big 12 Championship Tournament. Who do you have taking this one?
Yeah, I think this is kind of a pretty clear game than the last few that we've seen. I think we both kind of agree that Utah should be able to capitalize and run away with this one.
Yeah, Utah definitely the clear favorites in this game. UCF's been very inconsistent this season. They do not have very much depth on that team at all. And despite their slightly better record than CU, they're some might say they might be more deserving of that 16 spot.
Most definitely, and that's not an unfair argument at all based upon what we've seen from this team. Either way, they're going to come out hungry, they're going to come out fighting, and we've seen a couple upsets today, or I guess we've seen a upset today, but who knows what can happen.
Yeah, and this tournament exists so that teams can build Cinderella stories, so we could see the birth of quite the Cinderella story here if UCF is able to pull this off. But, yeah, there's not a lot of depth for that team. Utah, not an incredible team in their own right, but they've got some big wins over the likes of Kansas, and so they're going to be I think they're just going to bring too tough of a contest for UCF to fight off.
It's going to be very exciting.
Yep.
Well, as the first half got underway, it looked like Utah was going to run away with this one. They were attacking the glass with incredible ferocity, several dunks throughout the entire first half, and they extended their lead to 21-9 at one point. But it was at this point that UCF really started to turn the game around. They started hitting 3 after 3 after 3, and they pulled this game incredibly close. Utah hit a clutch dunk just before the half, but then UCF was actually able to hit somewhat of a buzzer beater to send them into the half just trailing by 1.
All right, so we're at halftime of the Utah versus UCF game, and right now Utah leading by 1 point, 40-39. It started off with a sizable lead, but UCF clawing their way back.
UCF able to extinguish what was a horrible drought and put out the flames on Utah's fire early on, but give credit to them. They've been able to fight their way back, and now we're in a neck-and-neck, basically 50-50 game where it's anyone's ball game.
Yeah, and UCF has made their way back shooting the 3-ball well. They're shooting a little over 38% right now. That's mostly from that scoring drought early on in the game, but they've been shooting it better down the stretch. And while Utah's been good down in the paint, and they've had a lot of dunks, they've been physical at the rim. They have not shot the three-point ball well at all. They've made 1 3 and currently have just over 8% shooting from three-point range. That is not going to win you basketball games. So if their interior falls apart, we could see them fall apart as a team. So it's going to be a question of if they can maintain that, if they can maybe improve the three-point scoring a little better, and then they're going to have to limit it from UCF.
Most definitely, and like you said, whoever scores the most threes in this half will remain victorious.
Yep. All right, we'll see you at the end of the game.
Well, unfortunately for Utah, that was exactly what happened. UCF made some serious locker room adjustments on the interior defense, and it was stifling against the Utes in the second half. And the Utes were also not able to pick up that three-point scoring, while UCF remained dominant from beyond the arc. So it was not really even close in the second half, despite what we predicted and how the first half had originally gotten underway.
All right, so that wraps up the first day of the Big 12 Men's Basketball Championship. UCF shocked us by defeating Utah 87-72. What a second half it was for them.
I mean, we said it at halftime. The team that was going to be able to knock down their threes would be the team that wins. Not only was UCF the team that knocked down the threes, Utah couldn't knock down anything.
It was a ice cold shooting second half.
Second half got started with a 24-3 run from UCF that Utah was never able to come back from. They were able to bring it as close as 9 points. That was about as close as it was able to get. Their three-point percentage at one point got as low as 5.5%, which is, I mean, that's inexcusable. Field goal percentage got as low as 35%. You can't put up numbers like that. They won in every other statistical category, but if you can't shoot the ball, then you're going to lose the game.
You don't score points, you don't win, and it was a rough night for Utah.
Yep. So we'll be back tomorrow for the second day of games, right back here at the T-Mobile Center.
All right, yeah, that is the end of day number 2. Day 1 of the tournament, day 2 of us being here. I'm going to go to bed now because it's like 12 in the morning, and we got to be up at the same time tomorrow to go back for day 2 of the tournament. So I'm going to go to bed, and yeah, we're going to get back to covering some more basketball tomorrow.
Got the fit ready for day number 3, and as we got to the stadium, the Iowa State fans were showing up big time. This was them trickling in pretty early in the morning, despite it being in the middle of the week. Good showing from them.
All right, so we're here for day 2 of the Big 12 Championship Tournament. We're getting it started off with one of the best matchups of the day, Iowa State and Cincinnati. Who do you got?
Yeah, I'm rolling with Iowa State. They got all their crowd, they got all the support, they got all the momentum, and although the Lob City Cats were in full effect yesterday, I just don't see them be able to replicate that success against a bigger, more physical team that has been there, done that, and is better.
Yeah, Iowa State was at one point among the best teams in the country. They were very highly ranked, and so there's a good reason for that. I mean, they're a big team, and they're not going to allow the same type of dominance from Cincinnati up close to the rim, down in the paint. We're just not going to be able to see that, I don't think, from Cincinnati in this game. So I'm going to have to go with Iowa State as well, but we will check back in at halftime to see how those predictions are holding up.
Well, Iowa State began to pull away early in the first half. They were shooting the ball incredibly well, but Cincinnati was showing some fight. They were hitting some shots of their own, and they did have to claw out of a bit of a hole they dug themselves into. But overall, they made it somewhat of a competitive first half, but Iowa State went on one more run down the stretch that ended up stretching their lead out, but a nice little shot from Jizzle James just before the half kept Cincinnati in it.
All right, so we've got halftime between Iowa State and Cincinnati, and so far our predictions looking pretty good. Iowa State up 33-24.
Yes, they are, and Cincinnati has been trying to shoot the three ball, and that's what kind of worked for them in the first opening minutes. It was actually looking like it's going to be a heat check kind of game, but ultimately that kind of teetered off, and Cincinnati's going to need to pick up their shooting if they hope to hang with Iowa State in the second half.
Yeah, over half of Cincinnati's shots attempted this game have been from three-point range, and they do not have all that good of consistency making them so far. Their percentage from the field, 29.6. That is not going to get the job done against a team like Iowa State. Iowa State's a tough team. They are a physical team, as we mentioned earlier. And yeah, if Cincinnati can't pick it up, then it's going to be more of the same.
Well, the Cats kept it close early on in the second half. Despite Iowa State getting out to a hot start, Cincinnati was able to bring it back, and they had a couple nice dunks, which I'll show here, but the lob threat that was there in day 1 just was not the same in day 2, and that's really what gave them such a big advantage down the stretch of that game. But Iowa State, without that lob threat being present for Cincinnati, was able to pull away, and it ended up in quite the blowout of a score.
All right, so that is a wrap from Iowa State versus Cincinnati. The Cyclones defeating the Bearcats in dominant fashion by a score of 76-56. And it was a close game for a while, but man, at the end there, it just all fell apart for the Bearcats.
It was exciting, it was close, but in the last few minutes, we saw a questionable decision on a drive to the cup, which pretty much ended the Cincinnati Bearcats season. It was an unfortunate way to go out. They weren't able to hit shots. They weren't able to consistently hit the three that helped them in the first half, and it's kind of why Iowa State was able to get the victory.
Yeah, down towards the end of that, there was just shooting inconsistency all over the place for Cincinnati. And they were, as soon as they were starting to come back a little bit, hit a nice three. Yeah, as you said, it was Jizzle James trying to drive to the basket and on just a poor shot selection. We saw that kind of frequently for them. It was a lot of shots early in the shot clock, in covered players, shooting mid ranges, step backs, and it was just a lot of unnecessary, somewhat selfish shots, and it cost them.
Definitely.
Yep. And so we will see you ahead of the next game between the West Virginia Mountaineers and Colorado Buffaloes.
All right, we are here pregame for the Colorado Buffaloes taking on the West Virginia Mountaineers. Colorado, the upset team of yesterday, now moving into the second round. Who do you got?
Yeah, Colorado's going to do a couple things right today if they want to come out with the victory, as if they have not defeated the Mountaineers this season. Obviously, there's a lot of teams in the Big 12 they haven't defeated. But that being said, I think they do have the energy, they have the passion to come out, take care of the basketball, do better on the boards, and to come out forward today.
Yeah, and they are going to have to limit West Virginia's scoring. They have a great offense, but yeah, as you said, like limiting those offensive boards is going to be huge. They gave up 22 to TCU yesterday, which is not going to cut it in this game with how talented West Virginia's offense is. Amani Hansberry, the forward for West Virginia, is their leading rebounder, but he hasn't been all that elite in comparison to some of the rest of the forwards in the Big 12. So they don't have quite the matchup there as they did against TCU, and hopefully they will be able to limit that a little bit more. I'm going to personally take Colorado. I mean, it's a little biased, but I'm going to keep rolling with them at this point. They proved people wrong yesterday. I think they can do it again today, especially now that they've shown they can close out games. How about you?
I agree 100%. I think we got upset Ren all over it, and who knows, maybe Colorado's poised to take on the Houston Cougars here soon.
All right, we will see you at halftime of this game.
Well, early in the game, turnovers plagued the Buffaloes. Javon Ruffin gave up a couple crucial ones that led to points, and ultimately it ended up burying CU in this first half. And although they were able to get some shooting going down towards the stretch, going into halftime, they had a lot of ground to make up if they wanted to make this close again.
Right, we are at halftime of the West Virginia Mountaineers taking on the Colorado Buffaloes. Mountaineers currently leading 29 to 23, but I don't quite think that score tells the full story of this half.
It's not very indicative of the game we've been seeing, as no other Buffaloes outside of Andre Yakamasi have even scored more than one field goal. Colorado's typical leading scorer, Julian Hammond, doesn't even have a field goal made. Only 2 free throws for him. It's been a struggle in the first half.
It has. It has been a struggle. The Buffaloes were able to ramp up their defense down the stretch of the half. A lot of the scoring for West Virginia came early on in the half. They had a 6-0 run in that time. Javon Small leading the way there. Extended their lead as high as 13 at one point. So they were really beginning to pull away, but the Buffaloes were able to eliminate some of their high percentage shots down the stretch. Their shooting percentage dipped down to 39.9%. And at the free throw line, West Virginia struggled. They've missed half of their free throws at this point, and that's really where the Buffaloes have been able to bring this to a 2-score game at halftime.
So the second half got underway and the Buffaloes began to heat up. They started to hit some shots that they needed to fall, and not only were they doing well from beyond the arc, but they were also attacking the basket well. They just were attacking well in the paint, and it showed in the scores. They were able to take the lead against West Virginia and hold on to it. And then this bucket right here from RJ Smith, I mean, this was pretty much the dagger, as despite West Virginia pulling it close, especially on this three-point shot late in the game here, they were just never able to bounce back, and Colorado pulling off quite the upset in this game.
All right, at the conclusion of Colorado versus West Virginia, we have another upset on our hands as the Buffaloes emerge victorious by a score of 67-60. What do you think?
I think that Colorado did exactly what they needed to do to come out and get this victory. They were better in the second half with turning the ball over. And not only that, Elijah Malone, explosive, dominant in the paint. His aggression is really what turned things around for the Buffs.
Yeah, it was the unlikely heroes in the second half for the Buffaloes. Elijah Malone and RJ Smith leading the way in that second half. And they really, I mean, usually with the Buffaloes, it's kind of inconsistent down the stretch of games, but they remain consistent and they drained the clock in those last 3 minutes. And they played smart basketball to close this game out. And that's something that they've proven that they are now fully capable of doing. So we are now ahead of Baylor and Kansas State. We will see you for the preview of that one. All right, so Baylor and Kansas State ready to get going here in the 6 p.m. slot from the Big 12 Championship in Kansas City. Who do you got winning this game?
You know, this one I think is going to be one of the closer games we've seen. I mean, all these games have been close, but I think this one's really going to come down to a last-second shot or two. Who's going to want it more? But I see the Baylor Bears coming out and be able to get this done, and what should be a close game.
Yeah, I think I think it's going to be one of the closest games of the day. This one is really up in the air, but personally, I'm looking for Kansas State's offense, Doug McDaniel especially, to lead the way here scoring-wise. I expect him to have a very good night. He performed well in their game yesterday, and yeah, personally, I expect them to. They just have a little more depth, in my opinion, than Baylor does, and I expect them to be able to maintain a bit longer than Baylor's going to be able to. But like you said, I could totally see it coming down to a last shot or two at the end of this game. But we'll update you at halftime and see how those picks are looking.
Well, early on in this game, it was clear that the same Kansas State team that had been so dominant yesterday was not here today. Their shooting was not present whatsoever. They had a few early three-pointers, but primarily Baylor started off hot. Kansas State was able to keep it close. Here was one of those three-pointers I mentioned, and Doug McDaniel was doing a bit of the scoring, but not quite the same night he'd had yesterday, and then it was also just physical dominance from Baylor down the stretch of the first half. They absolutely tore it up in the paint. Several just incredible dunks, couple here from Norchad Omier, and then an incredible inbounding dunk, which you'll see in just a second. It was unbelievable play from Baylor around the rim.
All right, we have reached halftime in the matchup between the Baylor Bears and Kansas State Wildcats, and currently Baylor running away with this one, up 41-24. What have you seen?
I've seen a lot of paint dominance from the Baylor Bears. They are exercising their right to score buckets, and they do not care who's in their way. Those Kansas State defenders seem to be just a little too small, as all that goes.
Yeah, and Kansas State, the shooting that was so effective for them, the three-pointers that were raining down in their last game against Arizona State have dried up. They are 1 of 12 on three-point shots, good for 8.3%. And from the field in general, it's been bad, 31% shooting for Kansas State. And that's their strength. If they're not able to play into their strength against a team that is bigger than them, that's going to dominate them in the paint, then that's going to lead to the type of deficit that we've seen so far. So if Kansas State can bring back that shooting, we might see a closer game down the stretch. But so far, all Bears through the first half.
And it was simply more of the same from Baylor in the second half. And not only were they continuing to dominate in the paint, they were also shooting the three ball incredibly well and just dominating Kansas State in all facets of the game. And yeah, Kansas State was able to go on one slight run towards the end of the game, never able to pull it back close, as Baylor kept hitting their threes, kept driving down in the lane and asserting their dominance, and overall just an incredible game top to bottom from the Baylor Bears.
All right, and that is a wrap for Baylor versus Kansas State. Baylor with a statement 70-56 win over the Wildcats. What are your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, this is by far the most dominant and consistent we've seen any team. I would say maybe potentially the Cincinnati versus Oklahoma State game, but outside of that, this has been the most dominant, lopsided, one-sided affair I think we've seen this whole tournament.
Yeah, Baylor was physically dominant over Kansas State. Kansas State shot the ball incredibly well against Arizona State, but they were not able to get any clean looks all game long against Baylor. Baylor didn't even let them go on a run really at any point in this game. And yeah, Kansas State just looked completely out of it. They finished with a field goal percentage just over 10%, which is or 3-point percentage just over 10%, which is not going to cut it. And it's a far cry from how they performed yesterday. Field goal percentage for the game at 31%. So overall, just a poor shooting performance from Kansas State, and Baylor with an incredibly dominating game down in the painted area. And yeah, who was your standout star of the game?
You know, I think when you look at Baylor, it's hard not to look at VJ and his performance. VJ Edgecombe, he was absolutely ferocious in the paint. He was dominant, and I think the Baylor Bears really built off his energy.
Yeah, Norchad Omier as well was incredibly effective down in the paint, and yeah, those two really just were. They were flying. They were flying all over the court for Baylor, and yeah, just drowning Kansas State. So now we get to our final game of the night between the Kansas Jayhawks and UCF Knights. All right, so we are here ahead of the Kansas Jayhawks taking on the UCF Knights in what is going to be quite the good matchup, and it's a very similar sort of setup to what we just had, where we've got a physical team going up against a team that has proved they can shoot the ball well.
Yeah, UCF came in streaky. They came in hot. They were firing on all cylinders, and I think that's what we're going to have to see from them today if they want to keep this up and get a victory. I just don't know if they can with the way Kansas is physical and they're going to get after them tonight.
Yeah, UCF, they shot the ball incredibly well last night. They were very efficient against Utah, but Kansas is at another level. They were a team that lost to Utah early on, but this yesterday's Utah team was quite clearly a different team entirely from the team that beat Kansas. And yeah, this is UCF's going to really have to take their great shooting, and they're going to have to take it up another notch against a team like this, led by Hunter Dickinson, KJ Adams down low. They are a physical team, and they are going to they're going to bully a team if they don't step in there and play to their strengths. So I think that UCF has the ability to pull this game off. I'm going to go with Kansas in this game. I do not see UCF being able to overcome the physical dominance of the forwards and centers for Kansas.
Well, UCF proved that they were not going to flinch against Kansas, and the ball was just flying in the first half. Both teams hitting a lot of three-pointers. The physicality we expected from Kansas wasn't as potent as you would expect, and UCF gave them an incredibly close game with some efficient shooting early.
All right, we've reached halftime in the matchup between Kansas and UCF, and we have quite a game on our hands. What have you seen so far?
I've seen a lot of great basketball, contrary to what we've seen in some of the earlier games. Both teams are finding their rhythm. They're finding the shot. They're playing confident, and we got a statement Big 12 game on our hands.
Yeah, UCF has not given Kansas a break. They've been playing primarily their starters through this first half. They really did not give their bench a lot of minutes. And it's proven effective. Currently only trailing 40-37 going into halftime, which is definitely a lot closer than I expected. Really a 8-0 run to start the game by Kansas. All 8 points from Zeke Mayo. He was very hot right out of the gate, and that's made the difference so far. Other than that performance, they have looked a little bit sluggish, and they've looked a little outmatched by UCF. So it'll be very interesting to see how this game finishes off down the stretch. We could have ourselves a down-to-the-wire finish here, and our pick's looking a little bit in jeopardy. We will check in after the game.
Well, there's only one way to describe what this second half was, and that is absolute cinema. Both of these teams were going back and forth, all the role players contributing well for both teams, and both teams keeping primarily their starting lineups in for the entire game. These guys played some insane minutes, and yeah, it was just, everything Kansas brought, UCF had an answer for, even taking the lead at a couple points during the second half there, but then the physicality from Kansas continued to answer, but as well the three-point shooting from UCF also continued to answer, and it was really just down to the wire. There was never a clue as to who the better team was, and then Jaden Ivey Curry hit this incredible three-pointer to tie the game, and he had a chance to win it at the buzzer, but came up just short, so we had some overtime basketball on our hands, and this is when Hunter Dickinson came alive. He came through clutch for his team, hitting some incredibly crucial shots and getting one final defensive rebound to ice the game for the Jayhawks.
All right, and that is final from day 2 at the Big 12 Championships. Kansas defeats UCF by a narrow score of 98-94. What a thriller to round out the nightcap.
UCF put it all on the line. Credit to them. They really, really wanted this one, and you could see it. Give Kansas everything they had, but got in some foul trouble there at the end. A lot of minutes played. Couldn't really just do any much more than they did.
Yeah, a lot of minutes played for their starters. As we mentioned at halftime, their starters basically, it remained about that way. They did not rotate their bench players in all that much until we got to overtime. Johnson fouled out, and that's when they started to have to rotate guys around. And you could see the fatigue in those players, and they just weren't quite able to pull it out at the end, but still play Kansas tough all the way to the final buzzer and through overtime. We had an overtime finish here, and it was a great, credit to UCF. What a game as well from Zeke Mayo. He had 24 points in the game. That 8-point start that he had to the game, that 8-0 run that Kansas went on, set the tone, and they ended up winning the game by 4. Without that, who knows where they would be. So that is a wrap for day 2. We are going to be back tomorrow for day 3 of the Big 12 Championship. We got some exciting games on tomorrow as well, so we'll be back for those.
So I didn't record anything the night we got home. Pretty much just went straight to bed. But the next day was cool. We got it kicked off looking at the championship trophy. Look at this thing. This thing was sick. Awesome. We got to see this before the games.
All right, we are here for the quarterfinals of the Big 12 championship, and we are kicking it off with Iowa State and BYU in what is the first game of an incredible slate today.
It is going to be an electric one. We're a little behind, as you can hear. The crowd is already rocking and rolling. Tip-off just began, but I do think BYU has a good chance of coming out and playing aggressive against Iowa State, who has been a pretty impressive team in this tournament so far.
Yeah, BYU, your pick for today?
Yes, they are.
All right, I'm going to have to counter. I'm going to go with Iowa State. The way that they looked yesterday, they looked like a great team. I think it's going to be a back-and-forth battle, though. These are two of the most evenly matched teams we've seen so far, and that's honestly going to be the way that it is pretty much down the stretch of this tournament. This is the best of the best competing, just trying to win this Big 12 championship now. We've kind of eliminated out the teams who aren't really ready to be here at this point, and now we're down to these teams who are genuine contenders. So I'm going to go with Iowa State here, but I can see it being a nail-biter. We'll check back in at halftime.
Well, this game got off to one of the hottest shooting starts we had seen in the entire tournament. It was back and forth, three-pointers raining down, and for Iowa State, Big 12 Sixth Man of the Year, Curtis Jones, started to heat up. He was unstoppable, hitting everything he shot down the entire stretch of the first half, and he was really the spark plug for this team. Despite them trailing early, they were able to pull it right back even, and the threes continued to fall for the rest of this game as well.
All right, we are at halftime between BYU and Iowa State. And despite a slow start from the Cyclones, what a statement they made to round out the first half. What did you see?
53 first-half points and an absolutely ballistic shooting performance from Curtis Jones. This may be the best in-person shooting performance I may have seen in my short time as a journalist, I'll be real.
Yeah, this at the very least, this has been a far cry from the other shooting performances we've seen from some of these teams here in the first 2 days. I mean, this has been putting all those other teams on blast. We had one point at this game where both teams were shooting 60% or more from the field, and Iowa State was shooting 60% from three while shooting 63% from the field at one point. I mean, just like lights out shooting at this point. Iowa State was down 10 at one point in the game, but were able to come back and now have a 53-49 lead going into halftime. If both these teams can keep this shooting going on, it's going to be one of the most exciting finishes to a game that we've had so far. Been an incredible start to the day, and we will update you with what happens at the result of this game.
Well, as I mentioned, the shooting for both sides continued to be electric in the second half, and BYU was on the more positive side of that coin as they got hot at the right time, going on a run to take back the lead, and then not only take it back, but build on it. And then eventually it was a clutch Saunders three-pointer that put them ahead in a lead that Iowa State really could not climb back from.
And that is a wrap from our first game of the quarterfinals. Iowa State falling short to BYU by a score of 96-92. And what a second half for BYU. They came around. They came back and turned that game around. What'd you see?
They were able to make a lot more adjustments, I think, and I think keeping the ball out of Curtis Jones' hands was definitely a game plan for them, which they did successfully. Because although he was still hot and still making shots in the second half, it just wasn't at the same volume, the same clip that he was hitting earlier, and obviously the three ball was not falling like it was. I think that's a big reason why BYU got the victory.
Yeah, the three ball dried up in the second half. Their 63% shooting percentage from three that they went into halftime with fell to just 43% by the end of the game. It really was not able to get going. Curtis Jones, despite having over 20 points in the first half, only ended up finishing the game with just over 30, so not quite the second half that he was hoping to have. Wasn't able to build quite as well on the first as he would have liked to. And yeah, his team was not able to generate that same offense without him. So now we prepare for the Houston Cougars taking on the underdog Colorado Buffaloes, who are now finding themselves in the quarterfinals. Despite coming into the tournament as the 16 seeds. We'll see you for the pregame for that one. All right, so now we're here pregame for the Colorado Buffaloes taking on the Houston Cougars. And man, we have one of the most interesting matchups of the day, and one of the ones we definitely didn't expect to see at this point.
Definitely didn't expect to see it, but we're here, we're enjoying it, and this game goes one of two ways. It's going to be a Houston blowout, or Colorado's going to be able to do what they've done this entire tournament, shoot consistently, keep it close, and we might get a down-to-the-wire finish here.
Yeah, I'm personally of the belief that if this game remains close, Colorado is probably going to pull it out. They've shown that they know how to finish games recently. They are on a hot streak, and they know how to close that out late in these contests and play when it matters the most. Now, there is a very good chance this goes the complete opposite way. Houston is the number 2 team in the country for a reason. They are a defensive juggernaut, and we saw an incredible defensive performance from both BYU and Iowa State. And Houston has an even better unit than either of them. They're a next level team, and you don't want to let how close Colorado played them the first time they matched up fool you. This is a incredible team that they are going to be playing today. We're both still rocking with Colorado for this game. We're gonna ride or die with Colorado. But I think either way, we're going to have quite the contest. It's either going to be a statement win for Houston, or we could see one of the shock upsets of the year in Colorado, potentially moving to the semifinals as a 16 seed. So we will be back at halftime to see how that's holding up.
Well, early on, it looked like the Houston blowout was in favor of happening, as LJ Cryer was leading the scoring for Houston, hitting a couple great early threes, and then their defense was flying all over the place and starting to smother Colorado for a bit, allowing them to extend their lead to 26-12 at one point. But after this, Colorado started to show some momentum, especially forward Andrei Yakimovsky, who really put the team on his back, started hitting some incredibly clutch shots, and suddenly he had them very well within reach of this game as they went into the locker room for halftime.
All right, and we are at halftime between the Houston Cougars and Colorado Buffaloes, and we have a game on our hands, as despite the Buffaloes being down and out early, they now trail 38-33 going into the second half. What a way to scratch and claw back for them.
Yeah, it almost looked very similar to yesterday's game where the Buffs did struggle to find their shot, but Sebastian Ranchik did have an ugly fall, and I think that was kind of the turning point. It seemed like the Buffs wanted to rally, gather around the court for their brother, and Andrei Yakimovsky towards the end there really started heating up, and his 3 threes were monumental for the Buffs.
6 of 9 shooting from the field for Andrei Yakimovsky to close out the half. He was rebounding effectively as well and really allowing the Buffaloes to run their offense through him. And he's stepping up in that senior leadership role, and that's what's going to be necessary if they're going to compete against Houston down the stretch of this game. Sebastian Ranchik, unlikely to return, it looked like, from that injury. He was in a lot of pain with an apparent ankle injury. So we will check back in after the game to see how the Buffs close it out.
Well, Houston came out of the locker room pretty invigorated, but that didn't stop Colorado from keeping themselves in this game. Their offense was playing at a very high level, with their unlikely stars producing at several points and in the ways that they needed to keep this a close game. This included an incredible several dunks down and just incredible play in the paint. But as soon as they brought it close, Houston guard Milos Uzan really just hunkered down, put the team on his back, and extended the lead to just out of reach for the Buffaloes.
All right, so to conclude the Colorado Buffaloes season, they fell short to the Houston Cougars just by 9 points, put up quite the fight, but not able to continue their Cinderella run. But honestly, got to respect their fight in this game.
You do, and got to respect the senior class who came out, they fought with their backs against the wall, coming in as a 16 seed, being able to get 2 wins in the Big 12 tournament in one of the premier basketball conferences. It was a very impressive performance from the Buffs.
Yeah, the whole tournament, just an incredible run from them, and a lot further than a lot of people expected them to make it. And they put on a show. And even in this game, despite it not being as particularly close as the other two had been, especially in that second half, they were able to cut that lead to 9 points at the end of the game. And it was no disappointing performance from them at all. Just a lot of credit to Houston and what they were able to do. And they're going to be a tough team to beat down the stretch. So now we are getting going with Texas Tech and Baylor in the 6 p.m. slot. All right, so now kicking off the game between the Texas Tech Red Raiders and the Baylor Bears, one of the most exciting matchups we got on the slate today. What do you see in this game?
I see a lot of intense action in the paint. Obviously, we know what these guys provide physically on the edge as well. Look at BJ Edgecombe looking to shoot the ball. He's going to be explosive. Both of these teams have the potential to get the victory, but I do see the Texas Tech Raiders and the reigning Big 12 Player of the Year coming out with the victory.
Yeah, JT Toppin has been excellent for the Red Raiders, especially down the stretch. He's a large part of why they got that double bye. And I think he's going to be incredible in this game. I'm also going to take Texas Tech with the victory. This is going to be a physical matchup, though. This is going to be hard-nosed basketball back and forth. But we will update you at halftime to see how both of these teams are doing.
Well, early on in the game, it was all Texas Tech. JT Toppin got off to a hot start, and we had actually both picked him to be the MVP of this game. And early on, he was showing it, but it did start to slow down after a little while. His production was not quite what it was in the early minutes, but still, as a team, Texas Tech offensively was rolling. Norchad Omier did get going for Baylor a few times, but had a bit of a scoreless streak for a while, and ultimately, Texas Tech was up pretty sizably going into the half.
All right, so we have reached halftime in the matchup between the Texas Tech Red Raiders and the Baylor Bears. So far, all Texas Tech through the first half.
Yeah, this has been a one-sided affair from the start. Texas Tech has not given up the lead since tip-off, and that's pretty much all you have to say about this one.
Yeah, currently up 52-39, and despite Norchad Omier having an incredible 18-point performance in the first half for Baylor, the rest of his team has fallen completely silent. So it's going to be interesting to see. Texas Tech is probably going to be targeting shutting him down, so potentially could see the rest of his team elevating around him. But that's what's going to need to happen. It's going to need to be more of a team effort for Baylor if they want to contest the Red Raiders, and they are red hot going into the second half. So we will be back at the end of that to report on the conclusion of this game.
Well, despite Baylor struggling in the first half, they overall had a very successful second half. They clawed their way out of the deficit, mostly at the hands of Norchad Omier, but the rest of his team started to pick it up a little bit once he got into foul trouble, and they brought this game back quite close, and yeah, they were all producing when they needed to. They brought it down to a nail-biter at the very end of this game. They had Texas Tech on the ropes before they got one opportunity to win the game at the buzzer.
All right, so that is a wrap from our second to last game of the night between Texas Tech and Baylor. Texas Tech holding on barely by a score of 76-74, not what I would have predicted at halftime.
No, when we're looking at the halftime numbers, and I mean, even up until like the last 10 or so minutes of that game, Baylor was still trailing by double digits. They were finding a hard time getting to the shot, but at the very end, they came within just a missed bucket, a couple inches of taking the win there, which was pretty impressive for how bad they were playing earlier.
Yeah, a couple missed free throws from Texas Tech at the end of the game actually gave Baylor a buzzer beater chance to win the game. That would have meant that they led the game for 0 seconds, but won it ultimately, which would have been quite the story. Norchad Omier was everywhere for Baylor. He was a one-man wrecking crew for that team. 29 points in the game, 15 total rebounds as well. He was doing everything for Baylor, but it still wasn't enough, and they fell just short of Texas Tech. And so the Red Raiders advanced to the next round. We are now set up for what is like our main event of the night. I think this is the game that we're all the most excited for, the Kansas Jayhawks taking on the Arizona Wildcats. So we will get to that pregame next. All right, so we are pregame before Kansas and Arizona close out the night here for the quarterfinals. What are you most excited for in this game?
You know, I'm excited for a big energy matchup. We have Arizona, who has yet to play in this tournament. They've waited 3 long days and a long one on the third, right? Playing at this late 8 p.m. slot. I think they're going to need to come out quick and get energetic and accustomed to playing in this arena, as Kansas has already had the advantage in doing that. And, of course, we know what their crowd brings to the table as well. It's going to be a lot for Arizona to have to overcome, but I think the Wildcats do have the team to be able to come out and get it done.
All right, Arizona, your pick for this game?
I'm going to ride with Arizona.
Excellent. Yeah, I think this is going to be a close one. This is going to be a close one because we've had a lot of contests where it's been power basketball versus shooting. And most of the time, power basketball's won. But when you're in a case like this, Arizona can be one of the best shooting teams in the country. So they're not just any shooting team; they are among the best. And so Kansas is going to have to be among the best of the physical teams in the country in order to pull this one out. I'm looking for a huge game from KJ Adams. I said it in our pregame stand-up this morning. KJ Adams, I'm looking for him to have a huge performance. And I think if he's able to do that, Hunter Dickinson able to perform well again, I'm actually going to go with the Kansas Jayhawks to pull off the win over Arizona and move on to the semifinals. So we will check back in at halftime to see how that game is going.
Well, early on in this game, Kansas was keeping it close. They hit a couple nice shots, and Hunter Dickinson was looking solid to open the game, but Arizona was shooting the lights out, and not only were they doing that, but they were out-physicaling Kansas. They had a better physical approach in the paint, and were more physical on defense, which allowed them to carry a lead into halftime.
All right, so we are at halftime between Kansas and Arizona, and the Wildcats currently holding a 45-37 advantage. They have been shooting the lights out in this first half. What have you seen?
They have. We've seen a repetition of what's been kind of the theme all day long. Impressive shooting from these top 4 seeded teams today. Arizona was able to go on a little bit of a run there towards the end, stifle Kansas, which have still been very competitive, still hanging around, and this is still anyone's game going in the second half.
Yeah, it really is, and the big men for Kansas haven't quite put forward the type of performance that they've needed to keep them in this game. Arizona right now shooting 53% from the field, 63% from three-point range. It was as high as 83% from three-point range at one point. So they have been absolutely lighting it up. So Kansas is going to need to play some better defense. They're going to need to bring it down low a little bit more. And, yeah, they're going to just need to limit that perimeter shooting from Arizona. But we will check back in at the conclusion of this game and the conclusion of day 3 of the quarterfinals here.
Well, as the second half got underway, Kansas was back with a vengeance, and primarily at the hands of their guard, Zeke Mayo. Mayo started putting on a shooting clinic from beyond the arc, and he pulled his team back in front as they got to the later points in the second half. But it was after his performance that Arizona did start to climb back into this game, and then eventually Kansas's interior defense fell apart again. It ultimately proved to be their demise as Arizona was still shooting the ball well, but now the fact that they were able to attack the glass and do whatever they wanted inside the painted area, it completely eliminated Kansas's hopes of winning.
All right, and that is a wrap between Arizona and Kansas, and the Wildcats pull this one out by a score of 88-77. What a game down the stretch for Arizona. Kansas kept it close for a while, but their shooting was just too much to overcome.
They did. It was looking really close there within 3 minutes up. It still was anyone's game like we talked about at the half, but coming down, it was Arizona able to get to the line, able to knock down their free throws, and they looked like they wanted it just a tad bit more.
Yeah, this was one of the unique circumstances in this tournament where we've seen the team that was more of a pure shooting team outscore the team that was going to be a bit more physical. Kansas was a little bit more. They had some size advantage, and they were not able to use that as much as they possibly could. Hunter Dickinson had a solid night. My pick, though, to be the MVP of the night, KJ Adams, was nowhere to be found. He did not contribute to the team as much as he needed to for Kansas to pull this game out. And then Arizona, you mentioned it in the pregame that Arizona can be one of the best shooting teams in the country when they are on a roll, and they were that tonight. So they're going to move on to the semifinals, and we will be back for those games tomorrow. We're going to head back home, get a good night of sleep, and then get refreshed for 6 p.m. the start time for those games tomorrow.
Day 4.
All right, time for day 4. Yeah, woke up feeling sick this morning, which is terrible. But we got semifinals today, so we're gonna go cover those and some commentary. It's gonna be cool.
All right, so we are here for the semifinals, and the first game is going to be between the Houston Cougars and the BYU Cougars in what is going to be a very hotly contested contest. Two of the best teams of yesterday clashing today.
Yeah, Battle of the Cougs going on here very shortly. I think Houston's going to come out, look to build on that big win they had against Colorado. They were firing on all cylinders, and the defense was coming effortlessly. Now, they are going to face a very much better shooting team in the BYU Cougars. I think that they're going to need to limit the three ball, but ultimately I do think Houston gets the win here today.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and agree with you. I think Houston's going to take this win, and I think it's going to come off their defense. I mean, I think, honestly, their win yesterday and it being such a close game, I think that says a lot more about Colorado than it does about Houston. I think Houston is still an incredible team. Colorado just has been showing the ability lately to play with the best of the team, the best of the best in the Big 12, and I think that showed again yesterday. BYU is a great shooting team, and I think this is going to be a very close game, but I think they are just slightly outsized by Houston, and Houston's defense is smothering. It stifled the Buffaloes yesterday, and I think we're going to see a bit more of that today. BYU not going to be able to tap into those three-point shots as well as they were able to against Iowa State, but we will check back in at halftime to see how these teams are stacking up.
Well, we forgot to record a halftime segment, so we're just going to go straight through with the highlights. And early on, it was Houston delivering a firm smack to the mouth of BYU. They were all over them, holding them scoreless through the first 8 minutes of the game. And they did not let up through the entire first half. Their shooting was lethal. Their defense was flying all over the court. And BYU looked like they were ready to put some pressure on them as the second half got open with a few incredible lob dunks to Kiba Kita early in the half, but they weren't able to build on the energy that generated. And Houston, just as they had done all week, as soon as his team started contesting them, they continued to do what they do best. They hit their shots, they played incredible defense, and they smothered the opponent. And this game never really even looked close at any point.
All right, and that is a wrap in the game between BYU and Houston. And my goodness, what a one-sided affair this was.
Yeah, this was a thumping by the Houston Cougars. They were dominant. They imposed their will. Not a great shooting day for them, but they knocked down shots when they needed to. And even when BYU had a little slimmer of hope of cutting down the run, they got it a little bit close there, down to 9 at one point. Houston called a timeout, came back, and slaughtered them.
Yeah, that was just a dominant performance. Their guards were playing incredibly well, and Sharp, of course, had 26 in the game, Cryer with 20, and that was just an incredible performance from them. Tugler was incredible on defense, and just every facet of the game, they were unbelievable. No Jawan Robinson today for them, but that did not matter in the slightest. If anything, I think this just shows why I think Houston is going to eventually go on to win the Big 12 championship.
Oh, yes.
They are one of the best teams in the country, if not the best team in the country, and they proved that today. So now we are ahead of Texas Tech and Arizona, and we'll be right back with that game.
All right, so we're ahead of Texas Tech and Arizona right now. It's going to be a great game. Just kind of want to go over a bit of a recap of the trip so far. It's been a dope time. We gotten to just watch a lot of great basketball, cover a lot of great basketball. It's been excellent. Gotten to talk to some great people here. The Big 12 has been super welcoming. It's been a super great experience. Nothing but good stuff to say. I will say, for Colorado, this was it was a bit of a tough one seeing them go out, and just because this is my first time I've ever really covered a team as close as I have with them and gotten to know the guys. So tough to see the seniors, heading out, but they put together a great tournament run. So it was excellent to see that. Great to talk to the young guys who are going to be coming up. Sebastian Ronchik, I talked to him yesterday after their loss, and he had nothing but positive things to say about the future of the team. So that's going to be super sick with them kind of just developing and taking this team forward. It's been an excellent experience. I got to do a lot of cool stuff here. I met Book Sciambi, which is awesome. He is one of the guys I look up to a lot. You all may recognize him. He does a lot of commentary for ESPN and Big 12 basketball. He's actually the way I know him primarily is he's the play-by-play announcer for the Chicago Cubs, the Marquee Sports Network. It was great to meet him. He's an awesome guy.
And yeah, it's just been a great time. Gotten to hang out with my boys and just watch some basketball. And if you guys would like to see, some more type of stuff like this, me going to events and just kind of covering the process of, going to these types of events and covering stuff, I'd be happy to do that. But yeah, we're going to get into this game, and then tomorrow we're going to have the Big 12 Championship, which is going to be awesome, flying out the day after. So yeah, just going to be a sick way to close out the trip. So let's get into Texas Tech and Arizona.
All right, so now it is time for Texas Tech and Arizona, our second game of the semifinals. Who do you have winning this one?
Yeah, this one's going to be a very close contest, I think, and this one's already underway, but I do see Texas Tech clipping the Arizona Wildcats in this one, although it will be close.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pick Texas Tech as well. I think Arizona is going to have a harder time shooting the ball than they did yesterday. Texas Tech, I feel like, is going to put together a similar game that we saw from Houston earlier in the previous game. I think they're going to be able to come up defensively and shut down Arizona for the most part. But although that could go the other way, Arizona has, yesterday I said if they shoot like one of the premier teams in the country, which they can, then they can win just about any game that they are in, and they did that. Yeah, they did that yesterday. They shot over 60% from the field. They were an incredible scoring team, and so now that if they're able to do that against Texas Tech today, then they could quite easily win. But we'll check back in at halftime to see how that's holding up.
Well, early on in the game, both teams were playing to their strengths, and it led to an incredibly even matchup. Texas Tech was playing incredibly physical and well in the paint to get their points, and for Arizona, they were working their way to their spots and taking the high percentage looks that had led to such good shooting percentages the entire tournament. But a run that they went on just before halftime gave them the lead as the buzzer sounded.
All right, so we've reached halftime between Texas Tech and Arizona. And while we had a close game, a very close game, actually tied coming down the stretch there in the final 3 minutes, Arizona with some electric shooting down the stretch to pull ahead 47-39. What have you seen so far?
Yeah, I've seen a repetition of what we saw yesterday out of Arizona and what was a high-scoring game then. We got another high-scoring game now, and although Obi Toppin hasn't been playing like his usual self, I expect him to get things going in the second half, as they're going to need to start playing much better if this game comes out so well. We both predicted to be a Texas Tech victory.
Yeah, and Toppin, I mean, he was the guy that we both expected to be carrying his team and putting him over the edge. I mean, this is the Big 12 Player of the Year we're talking about. And so far, just 8 points for him, and he is, or actually 6 points, excuse me, for him, and he has not been able to put up the level of production they've needed to be able to combat Arizona's type of shooting. And Arizona's been shooting the ball how they wanted to, and as we mentioned, they can be a top shooting team in the country if they want to be, and so far they have been. So it's really going to be up to Texas Tech, mostly on defense, to try and prevent that. We'll be back after the game to see how well they can do that down the stretch.
And as the game wound down, despite Texas Tech coming out hot from the locker room and pushing this game closer, it became a Caleb Love masterclass in the second half. His shooting was elite, and he was really willing his team forward in this game, scoring in a variety of different ways. He was shooting a three ball primarily, but then he was able to score on alley-oop jams like this, and he was really propelling his team in this game. Without him, they would have been in a much tougher situation because Texas Tech was still shooting the ball well. They did make this a close game, but Love and then Henry Visar as well both closed this game out, and it was their performances that ultimately sent them to the Big 12 championship game.
All right, and that is final from Texas Tech and Arizona. The Wildcats coming out on top by a score of 86-80. A bit of a surprising game here. What did you see in it?
Yeah, I saw a lack of activity from Texas Tech. I didn't see any urgency from them at all ever in this game until it was about a minute left, 2 minutes left, and by then it was just too late. Their shot wasn't falling enough early, and they were always just trailing Arizona by just enough to this game didn't feel very close. I felt like this half kind of dragged along as Arizona really kind of kept Texas Tech away.
Yeah, it was a tough game for them, and it didn't help that Arizona, especially Caleb Love, shooting the lights out. Caleb Love finishing the night with 27 points and just an incredible shooting night for him. And Texas Tech, I mean, our pick to be the MVP of the game, JT Toppin, he was not present in this game. 10 points for him, missing 2 crucial free throws at the end of that game. And yeah, just a pretty disappointing performance from Texas Tech. And I feel like we probably should have seen this coming after the way that they played against Baylor. But like at the same time, I mean, I feel like we expected them to take a step up against Arizona and maybe play a little more like they did in the first half of that last game. But yeah, Arizona, incredible night for them. Shooting efficiency continued. They were one of the top shooting teams in the country. They played like that again tonight. So they will now face Houston in the Big 12 championship tomorrow, which will be our final game here. So we are going to get down to the press conference, get back home, and get on to covering that game tomorrow.
All right, day 4. I don't even know where we're at right now. Day 4 wrapped up at the tournament. We're going to the championship game tomorrow, which is going to be sick. I got Houston and Arizona. It's going to be a dope matchup. That game's at 5 tomorrow, so we're gonna sleep in. I'm still not feeling great, and it was also like super smoky in the city today, so I'm kind of like wheezing over here. But we're gonna be getting a good night's sleep, just a good night of rest. We're gonna call the game tomorrow, so I'm gonna wake up and make some call sheets, and then tomorrow we'll wrap up the trip of at least of games. We fly out Sunday, but yeah, I'm gonna get to bed, dude. I ain't got nothing more to say.
Well, on our last day in the city, we had to get a little more barbecue, so we went to Slaps Kansas City Barbecue. It was so good. And then we went on down to the championship game between Houston and Arizona.
All right, so we are here for the Big 12 championship game, in a game that features the Houston Cougars and the Arizona Wildcats. Who do you have coming out on top as Big 12 champions?
Yeah, I'm not sure if that music is in the video, but we got NBA YoungBoy coming out with the Houston Cougars. I think that's going to be the support, and that summarizes their defensive capabilities. I think they're going to come out and get the W today.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and agree with you there. I think Houston has looked like the most dominant team in this tournament. Every other team has had a really close game, and the only team that's really played Houston close in this tournament so far was Colorado, losing by 9 points, if you want to call that close. But they have looked dominant in all of their games they've played, even though they've only gotten 2. I think that's going to be the same here as well. They are the number 2 ranked team in the country for a reason, and it's their defense. Their defense is going to shut down the shot that Arizona has been going to so frequently in this tournament. And I don't think we're going to see the type of night from Caleb Love or any of their other top scorers that we have gotten used to through the couple days of this tournament. So we will check back in at halftime to see how this game is stacking up.
Well, it appeared that every time we thought Arizona's shooting was going to dry up, it just never did. They were having a bit of a hard time defending beyond the arc, with leaving Houston's top scorers open a number of times, but they were able to make up for it with scoring of their own and led at the half.
All right, and we've reached halftime in the Big 12 championship game, and man, we have a game on our hands.
We do. This has been an exciting one. It started off a tidbit slow, kind of like a lot of these Houston games have, just because the defense and feel of the offense has been hard to get a rhythm going. But towards the end now, we saw a little bit of an explosion that's made this one very exciting.
Yeah, Arizona currently leading 33-28. Not what we expected at all. Arizona has come out and shot the ball incredibly well. 14 points for Caleb Love in the first half. He's come to play, and he has shown that consistency that they were looking for from him, and they knew they needed from him, and we knew they needed from him if they wanted to compete in this game. So Houston's got to find a way to start eliminating some of those shots. It's been lights out for Arizona to this point.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see in the second half who ultimately makes our all-tournament team here. It's going to be exciting to vote on that.
Yeah, so we're going to wind down the rest of this game, and then we will find out who our Big 12 champions are in 20 more minutes of basketball.
Well, this second half was not a tale of one team or the other. It was a tale of both teams showing exactly why they deserve to be there. The stars were out for both teams, as Emmanuel Sharp and Milos Uzan were leading the way for Houston, and on Arizona's side, Caleb Love and Henry Visar had another great game. and it was just a back and forth contest. Every time one team put something up, the other team had an answer for it, and it came down to who was going to have more answers than questions at the very end of the game. For Houston, they were responding to Arizona's good 3-point scoring with 3-point scoring of their own, and then they were also responding when Arizona tried to play down in the paint with incredible paint scoring of their own. And then, of course, that final dunk signaled the end for Arizona and a Big 12 championship for Houston.
All right, and that is it. The Houston Cougars are your 2025 Big 12 champions. What a game from them, and what a game from Arizona as well. Just a close, incredible contest down to the final buzzer.
Yeah, and what a game for Milo Suzan, who had 25 points here. I think he was the most outstanding player of the game. It was an absolutely fantastic tournament run for Houston. They were dominant on defense, and they won every single game by an impressive margin. Down the stretch, able to capitalize on some fantastic defense.
Yeah, and Houston, while they looked a bit sloppy, they were trailing at halftime. The defense wasn't what it has been during this tournament. They were able to perform down the stretch. They limited Arizona's scoring. Arizona even had I believe it was a 4 or 5 minute scoreless streak down towards the end of that game when they really needed those shots to be falling, and Houston was able to just completely eliminate them. So an incredible game for Houston. Yeah, you mentioned Uzan, and then, of course, Emmanuel Sharp as well had a great game. Joseph Tugler was incredible on defense. Just overall, a well-rounded performance from Houston. But what a game by Arizona. They weren't really expected to be as close in this game as they were, but Caleb Love led them into this game, and they performed incredibly well. KJ Lewis had a great game as well. They really gave Houston a battle today, and I think that they've given some other teams a lot to look at in terms of ways to beat Houston going into March Madness. So yeah, if you don't have any other final thoughts, it's been an incredible week here at the Big 12 Championship. And yeah, we are gonna get down and record our final few stand-ups before we get out of the stadium for the last time this week.
Alright, so that concludes the actual days we will be at the tournament. My hair is a mess. I just got out of the shower. But that's the days that we're going to be at the tournament. Tomorrow we fly out. We're going to get some barbecue in the morning. Yeah, it's going to be a chill little travel day tomorrow. Getting back home.
All right, so that concludes our trip to Kansas City. Made it back safe, had a nice little travel day. Didn't record all that much because we were pretty much we didn't even get barbecue in the morning. We just basically got up, went straight to the airport, and then headed home. And yeah, I overall just had an incredibly good experience on this trip. I know I talked about it a little bit while I was at the stadium, but I just can't express enough how great Kansas City was, how amazing the stadium was, and how welcoming the city was. And the other thing I don't think I mentioned in that was just the event staff for the stadium were great. The people that we met who were just working these games were amazing, and they were some of the nicest people we met on that trip. So really appreciative of them, really appreciative of all the people I got to meet while I was there. So if you want to see some more of this type of content from me, let me know. I'm happy to, next time I go to an event like this, make a similar type of video. But yeah, this has been just a great experience, and shout out to Colorado as well. It gave us a great semi-Cinderella run to watch while we were there, and yeah, just excited to keep making some more content on this channel. One other thing I forgot to mention as well, go check out Leo, who was doing this video with me. He was doing all the analysis alongside me and also whipped my ass in picks. So I'm going to put his Instagram down below. Go and check him out. Go check out some of his stuff. Yeah, make sure to I want to give him a shout out because he helped a lot, put a lot of hard work into this video as well. So I know this is a bit of a long video. I also just want to thank you all for watching. Yeah, this was just this took a lot of work as well to just put this all together. So I appreciate you guys watching, and I will catch you in the next one.